Joel sat anxiously in a van, his nerves frayed after a relentless week haunted by a sinister entity known as the Smile. Desperate to break free from the curse, he came up with a grim plan: transfer it to a drug dealer. When one of the dealers showed up, Joel seized the opportunity. He lured the dealer into his home and, in a brutal frenzy, stabbed him to death, right in front of the dealer's brother. The brother, enraged, tried to shoot Joel but was fatally shot by Joel instead. Joel panicked as he realized he needed the brother alive to witness the killing and pass the curse. Unfortunately, the brother died, foiling his plan. As Joel was about to leave the apartment, another associate of the drug dealer arrived, spotted him, and gave chase. Joel escaped through a back window and ran onto the road, but he was struck by a car. His bloody remains, smeared across the pavement, eerily resembled a smile. The scene then shifted to pop superstar Sky Riley, who had survived a car accident the previous year that took the life of her boyfriend, actor Paul Hudson. After months of recovery and a mental breakdown, Sky was gearing up for her big comeback with a new tour. Despite her excitement, she struggled with sharp back pain, likely from the accident. During rehearsals, Sky repeatedly fell due to the pain. Afterward, she texted a man named Lewis, asking him to provide her with drugs, including Vicodin. Later, when Sky visited Lewis's apartment, he greeted her in a panic, holding a sharp weapon to her throat. He claimed he hadn't sent her a message and insisted something sinister was stalking him. Reluctantly, he let her go and went to fetch the drugs. Moments later, Lewis returned in a state of sheer terror, begging an unseen force to spare him. Suddenly, the invisible entity possessed him. With a chilling smile on his face, Lewis grabbed a heavy weight plate and brutally smashed his face until he died. Horrified, Sky vomited and contemplated calling 911, but decided against it, fearing the consequences of being in a drug dealer's apartment. After returning home, Sky began experiencing the first signs of the curse, hearing strange sounds and vivid hallucinations. Determined to carry on as if nothing had happened, she focused on preparing for her tour. During a photo shoot, she panicked, realizing she had left her vomit at LS's apartment. Googling whether vomit could be traced through DNA, she became increasingly paranoid. Her anxiety heightened when an unknown individual asked if she had been at Louis's apartment. To her horror, she saw LS's corpse in a mirror, but when she turned around, there was no sign of him. Shaken, she attended a meet and greet event with fans. While interacting with them, a strange man named Alfredo approached her. He unnervingly complimented her, claiming he wanted to take her skin. As Alfredo grabbed her, security intervened and removed him. Sky, deeply disturbed, stepped away to process what had just happened. A few minutes later, Sky resumed taking pictures with fans. A young girl with a creepy smile approached her for an autograph. Shaken by the recent string of unfortunate events, Sky decided to swallow her pride and reach out to her estranged best friend, Gemma. Their friendship had ended due to constant arguments, but Sky apologized and pleaded with Gemma to visit her, explaining she had no one else to turn to. Gemma agreed and promised to arrive in 45 minutes. While waiting, Sky sat at her piano and started singing, but she suddenly heard someone else singing in her apartment. Alarmed, she searched for the source and discovered a SED t-shirt she had given Alfredo, along with his clothes and dirty underwear scattered across the floor. At the end of a dark hallway, she spotted a strange entity standing still. Terrified, Sky ran toward the door, only to be startled by Gemma's arrival. Gemma found Sky clutching an object and panicking as if someone had broken in. After checking the apartment and finding no one, Gemma was confused by Sky's behavior. Sky hugged Gemma and asked how she had arrived so quickly, to which Gemma responded that it had been an hour since Sky's call. Feeling overwhelmed, Sky drank an entire bottle of water, recalling advice from her recovery therapist to drink water. Whenever she feels stressed or tempted to use drugs, Sky explains to Gemma the horrifying incident at Louis's apartment, how he was terrified, screamed, and smashed his own face. Gemma advises her not to involve the police, warning it could ruin her life. That night, Sky has a disturbing dream where she sees Gemma making a creepy, smiling expression and mimicking car honking noises. Sky wakes up in a panic the next morning to find Gemma making breakfast. Realizing she's running late for tour rehearsals, Sky asks Gemma to come watch her, but Gemma declines, revealing she already made plans with her new friends. At rehearsal, Sky performs with her dancers but is interrupted by a sudden vision of her late boyfriend, Paul. Startled, she falls and screams, believing her leg is broken. Moments later, she realizes it was just a hallucination. Angry and embarrassed, she accuses one of the dancers of throwing her off balance, but her boss informs her that no one had moved out of position. Frustrated, Sky storms into her dressing room, finding it trashed. She angrily blames her assistant, Joshua, but her mother, Elizabeth, explains that Joshua had been with her all day. Concerned by Sky's erratic behavior, Elizabeth asks if she's been using drugs again and urges her to pull herself together since the tour is fast approaching. Sky, however, contemplates canceling the tour, fearing she might embarrass herself in front of the audience due to her deteriorating mental state. Her mother immediately disagrees, insisting that canceling the tour would ruin Sky's career. Hesitant but unable to convince her mother otherwise, Sky later attends a charity event at Darius's invitation. As he is hosting it, though reluctant, she agrees to go. While reading from the teleprompter during the event, it suddenly stalls, forcing Riley to improvise with a speech. However, her words turn into a personal rant about her struggles. When the teleprompter resumes, it shockingly displays Paul's name, catching Riley off guard. She suddenly sees a smiling Paul walking toward her. Panicked, she yells at him to stop smiling. Her outburst shocks the audience, and she snaps back to reality as an older woman tries to help her. Before Riley can compose herself, the vision of a bloody Paul reappears and grabs her. In her panic, she accidentally pushes the woman off the stage and onto a table, leaving the audience in stunned silence. Back at her apartment, Riley begins receiving continuous messages from an unknown number. The sender claims they know what she's experiencing, insisting that she isn't imagining things and that everything she's seeing is real. They send her a video of Louis speaking about the deity before his death, which leaves Riley terrified. Desperate for answers, she rushes to meet the mysterious sender at a bar. The man introduces himself as Morris and apologizes for meeting her in public, knowing she's a celebrity. Morris explains that he had been tracking Louis to warn him about the entity, but found him dead instead. After checking Louis's phone, he discovered Riley was the last person Louis contacted, leading him to believe she might be possessed. Morris reveals that Louis didn't kill himself, but was systematically possessed and murdered by the demon. He explains that the entity is like a parasitic force that infects its hosts through their minds. It feeds on their negative emotions and within a week drives them to madness before forcing them to kill themselves in front of a witness. That witness then becomes the next host. Morris further reveals that he knows all this because the same entity killed his brother. Through his research, he discovered that the chain can only end if the infected host dies in a way not orchestrated by the entity. He suggests stopping Sky's heart to deprive the demon of a life source, after which he could revive her before the entity could finish her. Riley, horrified by this plan, rejects it and storms off. As fans begin to recognize and surround her, she hurries home, trying to calm herself. Back at her apartment, the entity appears to her in the form of her backup dancers, who chase her around the room. They corner her, and one of them seemingly forces their arm down her throat, causing her to lose consciousness. The scene flashes back to the night of the accident. With Paul high on cocaine, Sky and Paul had gotten into a heated argument. In a fit of anger, Sky grabbed the steering wheel, causing the car to veer off the road. This led to the crash that claimed Paul's life. Riley wakes up in a hospital, where her mother explains that she was found unconscious at home and rushed to the hospital. Riley insists on canceling the tour, claiming she's not in the right state of mind. However, her mother strongly disagrees, warning her that canceling would ruin her career and lead to lawsuits from the record label for damages. Riley becomes furious, realizing that money is all her mom cares about and not her well-being. Suddenly, the entity appears disguised as her mom, Elizabeth. It manipulates Elizabeth into punching a mirror, but when Riley tries to help her, the entity forces Riley to stab her mom repeatedly. As Riley snaps out of it, she finds herself holding a shard of glass, with blood-stained clothes and her mom's lifeless body on the floor. Joshua tries to enter the room, but Riley sends him a message to keep him away so she can escape. However, when Joshua returns, he finds her covered in blood and alerts the hospital staff. Panicked, Riley steals a guard's gun and escapes. On the run, she encounters Gemma and forces her to drive, hoping to find Morris. While driving, the real Gemma calls Riley, making her realize that the entity had been impersonating Gemma for days. Riley repeatedly tells herself she's in control, and the entity vanishes, giving her a brief moment of clarity to regain control of the car. Riley tracks down Morris at an abandoned pizza joint to proceed with their desperate plan. She tells him that if his theory doesn't work, he should shoot her. Morris agrees and prepares to place her in a deep freezer, hoping to slow down the entity's effects. As the process begins, Morris steps out of the freezer and the entity attacks Riley. It forces its hands into her mouth, trying to make her smile. Desperate, Riley bites off its thumbs and injects herself with a sedative intended to knock her out. Unfortunately, this doesn't stop the entity. Instead, it reveals to her that everything she's experienced so far has been an illusion. Riley suddenly finds herself on stage during the opening night of her tour, with Elizabeth alive and thousands of fans watching as she performs. The entity emerges from her own body, revealing its grotesque, gigantic form before walking into Riley's mouth. She collapses on stage, unconscious, before rising to her feet with a haunting smile. In a horrifying off-screen moment, Riley begins smashing her head with her microphone as the crowd watches in terror. The aftermath of her actions is left to the audience's imagination as the screen fades to black, ending the movie on a chilling note.